In this episode of Revolution Report, we're going to be discussing Nestle and their deeply unethical practices, which span violations of human rights and freedoms to destruction of the environment.
Before we get started, we wanted to let you all know that on our website, handballcourtradio.com, we now have a way to donate to the station. We fund this station with our own money, and if you appreciate our content and the work we do, we'd really appreciate any donations to help us keep our station free.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Let's do it.
Last episode, you may remember, we discussed monopolies and the Ellison family and talked about why monopolies are harmful to workers and consumers. Go check that episode out if you missed it. But in this episode, we're discussing another corporate monopoly, Nestle.
Nestle owns more companies than you might expect. We'll go over a list later in the episode, so stay tuned. They're an incredibly powerful corporation. And, unfortunately, they're also deeply, deeply unethical.
You could say that again.
They're also deeply, deeply unethical.
Thank you, Diva.
Anything for you. And that is what we're going to dive into right now.
To kick off this discussion, we wanted to talk about Nestle's use of child slavery. Yes, you really did hear that right. Child slavery.
Over the decades, Nestle has been credibly accused of using cocoa harvested by child slave labor in West Africa. The chocolate industry is unfortunately ripe with slave labor and with child labor. In 2001, Nestle claimed they would guarantee that by 2005, their chocolate was produced free from child slavery. Spoiler alert, that still hasn't happened.
As recently as 2019, Nestle claimed they couldn't guarantee that their chocolate was free from child slave labor because they couldn't trace 51% of their cocoa back to the farms they bought it from. Absurd. Do better.
Agreed wholeheartedly. And in 2021, Nestle was named in a class action lawsuit that alleged that Nestle, along with Hershey and other chocolate companies, not only knew, but actively participated in child slavery in chocolate production. The lawsuit was ultimately dismissed by the U.S. Supreme Court because the events occurred outside of the U.S., but it's definitely still something to keep in mind when purchasing chocolate.
As if that wasn't bad enough, in 2015, Nestle revealed that they have been using seafood products from Thailand that were sourced, get this, using slave labor for Purina cat food. The corporation claimed that they would investigate their supply chain for further use of slave labor, but clearly, as we discussed earlier, they're still not free from using that slave labor.
Shameful. Adding to Nestle's crimes against humanity, the corporation doesn't care about people's right to water. Nestle is notorious for taking control of aquifers that communities use for clean water and privatizing them to make bottled water.
Horrible. Aquifers are underground water reserves and vital sources of groundwater around the world. Nestle taking control of and privatizing aquifers is a global problem. They've undermined the sovereignty of indigenous communities around the Americas, in Canada, the U.S., Mexico, and Brazil. They swoop in, take over their water supply, and force Native people to rely on bottled water instead of the water from their own land.
And who owns multiple brands of bottled water? Nestle. They have literally taken over these Native people's water and then sold it back to them at a higher price. That is absolutely ridiculous. But their unethical water practices aren't just contained to the Americas. In Pakistan and Nigeria, Nestle's rates of water extraction left communities with water shortages and scarcity.
Not only that, but Nestle was found to have contaminated water supplies in Pakistan and Nigeria, causing people in the communities they're exploiting to get sick from drinking dirty water. On top of that, an audit by the Pakistani government in 2018 revealed that Nestle had stolen billions of liters of water from 2013 through 2017.
And if you're as astounded as we are, you might be thinking, how can all of this happen? Well, in 2000, Nestle, amongst other companies, persuaded the World Water Council to downgrade access to drinking water from a right to a need. The distinction there is that rights are legally protected, needs are not. Unfortunately, as the world currently operates, access to needs like food, water, and shelter aren't legally guaranteed.
So, Nestle is free to do deeply unethical things as they try to privatize water sources around the world because access to clean water is no longer considered a right. And from an environmental perspective, Nestle's actions are also hugely detrimental.
In California, Nestle has been taking water from the San Bernardino National Forest at rates that the state says they have no right to do. This is a national forest, something that's supposed to be protected, and they're out here damaging the ecosystem.
In 2019, the federal government acknowledged that Nestle's actions are causing springs and streams to dry up and damaging a watershed, but claimed that Nestle, get this, could carry on. And remind me, who was president in 2019?
That would be Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, and it wasn't Biden in his auto pen, that's for sure.
True. Furthermore, in 2015, investigators in France uncovered Nestle's illegal dumping of plastics, glass, and demolition waste near water bottling facilities, contaminating water supplies with harmful materials. They also discovered record-breakingly high levels of microplastics in bottles of water from Nestle-owned companies like Contrex and Hapar, with the microplastic levels up to 1.3 million times higher than rivers and lakes and 3,000 times higher than groundwater averages.
Yes, and obviously this is going to wreak havoc on people's bodies and immune systems. I mean, we're already seeing the effects now. So be very careful what you drink, because Nestle has also greatly contributed to the deforestation of national parks in Ivory Coast and Ghana. Over 90% of the land that was once densely forested has become converted to cocoa crops. This deforestation has reduced chimpanzees' habitats to just a few locations and absolutely decimated the elephant population of the area, cutting it down from hundreds of thousands to only about 200 to 400 elephants. I'm choking up, even saying that out loud.
It is that horrific. And it is a huge, huge tragedy which they should absolutely be held accountable for. And unfortunately, this is not a comprehensive list of all of Nestle's wrongs. So if you want to learn more, we encourage you to do some research of your own. There are multiple baby formula scandals, union-busting activities, and food safety issues in case you needed more convincing of the corporation's flaws, and we will include links to some of those stories on our website, handballcourtradio.com.
Nestle has even more ties to Trump administrations. In 2017, Nestle lobbied for and succeeded in getting Trump to select Sonny Perdue and the Secretary of Agriculture. And remember that 2021 court case we discussed earlier in which Nestle was accused of knowingly engaging in child slavery. Not only did Trump's Supreme Court make the decision to dismiss the case, Trump's administration backed Nestle while the case was in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Wow. Now, if you've been listening and are just as infuriated as we are, you probably want to know all the companies owned by Nestle so you can do your best to avoid buying their products. After all, the most effective way to make a corporation hurt is to stop buying what they're selling. The only way they will ever change is if their bottom line is affected.
I mean, think of it like a Jenga tower. If that bottom line is somehow miraculously pulled from under, the whole tower goes crumbling.
And we want that tower to be Nestle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, here's a list of some major Nestle-owned companies. And get ready, because it's a lot. For baby food, Gerber, Nature Nest, and Cerelac.
For chocolate and cookies, Kit Kat, Toll House, and Smarties.
For coffee, Nespresso, Nescafe, Coffee Mate, and Starbucks coffee at home.
For frozen food, Stouffer's, Hot Pockets, DiGiorno, and Lean Cuisine.
For ice cream, Dreyer's and Haagen-Dazs.
For drinks, Nesquik, Nestea, and Ovaltine.
And for pet food, Purina, Fancy Feast, and Alpo.
Now, this is not a full list of all of the companies owned by Nestle, just the most popular ones. They own hundreds more. Reading them all would take ages, so we'll include a list of them all on our website, handballcourtradio.com, and we encourage you to check it out so you can be confident while shopping.
Again, the most effective way to protest Nestle is to stop buying their products. But if you want to do more, and we encourage you to do more, we want you to research the people who will be on your ballots in the upcoming elections.
100%. In order to best fight corporate greed and companies valuing profit over people or the planet, we need elected officials who aren't bots and have antitrust beliefs. 2026 is a midterm year, and your state or city may also be having elections. So make sure you know what each candidate stands for.
And while congressional races are absolutely important, so are state and city elections. We need elected officials at all levels that have integrity. And I know that's something we're not used to, but we have to ask for more, and we shouldn't be afraid to ask for more.
And it's our right as citizens.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to let candidates know what you believe. Politicians inevitably want to get elected, so they want to take stances people will vote for. So let them know you won't vote for any of them if they bow to corporate interest.
So freaking correct. Make it unpopular to put profit over people. We want our elected officials to hold corporations accountable instead of letting them get away with literal violations of human rights and total disregard for the environment.
1,000%. So let's fight back against corporations like Nestle as consumers, but also in the ballot box. Huzzah!
Huzzah! That's about it for this episode. We hope it was informative.
As always, you can check out our website, handballcourtradio.com. There, if you appreciate the work we do, you can donate to keep this station free. Also, you can follow us on Blue Sky at Handball Court Radio. And you can also follow me there at Sarah Livings-Walsh.
I'm there as Not Like Mona Lisa. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate, review, and follow us. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'd love it if you like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss our content.
And with that, I'm Sarah Livings-Walsh.
I'm Analisa Venolia.
And this has been Revolution Report.